Hi, it's Todd from Todd's Workshop and Todd Cutler here, and today the book we're going to look at is Knives and Scabbards by Cowgill et al., Museum of London publication. And this has a very close place in my heart because it's kind of where Todd Cutler all began, Todd's Workshop all began really. But I'll come to that in a minute. So this is a publication by the Museum of London. The Museum of London is a lovely museum. I absolutely adore it. And it is a museum about London. So it starts in prehistoric times, going way back, and then rather than a museum often will have Roman culture, Egyptian culture or whatever, it just does it by time period. Not that there's a lot of Egyptian in London, but anyway, you know what I mean. But it does it by time period. So it starts in prehistory and then it comes forward and then you'll have some Stone Age stuff and some Iron Age, Bronze Age and Iron Age and so on, going forward, going through to the modern day. So it doesn't have massive collections on display of any particular period because it's not that big a museum. But it does have interesting pieces. But what it does have is a massive back catalogue of pieces because excavations have been going on in London and they've been saving things since the 1800s. And a lot of that has ended up in the Museum of London. And the Thames is still consistently just throwing up bits and pieces of dress accessories and knives and things like that. New excavation in the centre of London and they might find a new midden pit which is full of shoes and knife scabbards and things like that. So this is I think a 1980s book, I think, but there's still more coming. And the thing about the book as well is it's knives and scabbards. It's not daggers, it's not swords, it's eating knives, it's the small things. And when I started reenacting 30 years ago, you just couldn't really get things like that. There was one or two makers making nice pieces that I couldn't afford, so I started making my own. I very rapidly thought, I can't just do it out of my head, I've got to go find some information, and that book was one of the first things I found. It's beautifully illustrated, like every piece in here is dated as best they can, but dating of course when it comes out of a river, if it's not in strata, if it's not in the area that it was found with the other objects that help to date it, it really can be quite difficult. So they've dated it as well as they can. They've illustrated it throughout, so I'll just show you a nice random picture there that I've just opened. So those are, I don't know, 14th century knives by the look of it. Yes, they are. And it starts though in a really nice way. So it starts by explaining how blades would be made. So they could be all wrought iron, they could have an edge forge welded on it, they could be split open and have an edge welded in. So it goes through the technology of the knives themselves. And then it does the same thing with the scabbards as well, or the sheaths. So interestingly actually, as a terminology, usually a sheath is something that's floppy and a scabbard is something that's hard. Think condom for sheath. That's how I always remember it. So actually, most of the things in this book, as far as I know, are not scabbards, they're sheaths. But anyway, so it's a slight misnomer, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, so it goes through how the sheaths are made. So not only just the shape of them, but it talks about how they're sewn and the different sewing patterns that might have been used on them. And of course, some sheaths are even glued as well. It talks about the leather that it's made of, the thickness of it, the animals that it came from. And then it is just absolutely rammed with different bits of decoration on sheaths like these. So you get these fantastic foundation for all of your work over a 300-year period, really. But the other thing to remember about London and the Thames at that time was it was a massive trading port that went all the way up to the Baltic states, all the way down to sort of Spain and Portugal. So an awful lot of what you find could have come from different places because not only is it the sailors, but the traders as well. So you'll find vast similarities between the knives of Holland and Denmark and the leatherwork of Holland and Denmark, for instance, the Low Countries, northern France, England. Often very difficult to tell one thing from another. But then you also end up with distinctly German pieces as well, where they had a slightly different way of doing the metalwork that was very fancy on the whole, sophisticated. But then coming back to the knives as well, you have the different construction methods that the knives would have. So whether they've got bolsters on them or whether they haven't, how those bolsters were made, what the handles were made of, the materials, how they're decorated. It's just another random page I've just pulled out here. So you can see this lovely one here just on the end where I'm tapping my finger. So if you want a book that is just the best grounding you can possibly get to small eating knives from that part of Northern Europe over a 300-year period and the sheaths that go with them, I cannot recommend this enough. I really can't. It is just a fantastic book. And it has, if I can find it for you, one of my favourite pictures. Now, I read it one way. Other people have said something else. And actually, just flicking through, because it's been a while since I've looked, I've found a couple of pages of the maker's marks. And in fact, when I was looking for a maker's mark for Todd's workshop originally, I saw this one here, number 81, which is a quadrant cut into three pieces. A circle cut into three pieces. And I just did mine, thought I couldn't copy, so I did it into 4. And that is where the Todd's Workshop mark came from. So now we come to a section here, which is just illustrations of knives in use and being worn. So we get lots of illustrations like these here. And you can just go on page by page, and there's lots of them. And then we come to this one here, which is of a knife seller. Now this is interesting for a couple of counts, because if you look at the knives on the top rack here, he's selling knives and purses, you can see that they don't have sheaths on them. Now that I find quite interesting, because when I make knives now, I try and make the sheath robust and strong and fitting really closely to the knife. But actually it doesn't seem that it was always that way. It might be that you just buy the knife or you buy the sheath separately and they kind of fit and that's kind of good enough. But the other thing that you'll note from this book is an awful lot of sheaths were one layer of leather, 1.2mm thick, thereabouts, 1.4, sheepskin. Now that's really soft. It's almost a disposable kind of a leather. Now they weren't all like that, but a lot of them were. And so it meant that we view a knife sheath these days as an integral, permanent part of the knife. It looks to me like often they were almost disposable items. But the other thing that I like about this, it makes me laugh, is I'll show you that picture again. And you've got a knife stall there with the ladies chatting, and then some people just down the street going at it. Now I just thought that was kind of a funny thing until somebody pointed out to me about a year ago or so that she doesn't look very happy about it. And so perhaps it's not to people having innocent fun in the middle of the street, that it's actually a lot more sinister than that. So it has removed some of the joy of that picture for me, but whatever, I'm going to stick with my original one if I can, which is that just in the middle of a market day, two people are hard at it in front of a knife stall. Why not, I suppose? That's the medieval times for you. But anyway, that's it really. Knives and Scabbards, just a fantastic book. If you want to invest your £20 or whatever it is these days, go find it. There's a link in the notes where we talk about this and all sorts of other things as well, links back to the site. It's just brilliant. Go get this book.